Good evening and welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee meeting of Burnley Borough Council on the 24th of March 2021. Committee members present are Councillor Shah Hussain, Vice Chair of Audit and Standards, Councillors Sue Graham, Bill Brindle, Tom Commis, Margaret Lishman, Lorraine Mahana and Andrew Tatchell. Co-opted members are not present thus far in the meeting. I'm not aware that apologies have been received. We're joined tonight also by our external auditors, Barry Morris from Grant Thornton and Helen Stevenson from Grant Thornton. Officers present are Catherine Wardby, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, Howard Hamilton-Smith, Head of Finance and Property, Amy Johnson, Finance Manager, Ian Evenett, Internal Audit Manager, and Salma Hussain, Auditor. Democracy Officer is Christine Wood. And the meeting is being streamed by Paul Barlow and hosted by myself, Chris Gay, Council's Governance Manager. Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the meeting, everyone. Is there any apologies tonight?
We have apologies from the Chair, Councillor Paul Campbell.
Is there any other apologies?
I have not received any other apologies.
Okay, thank you. Can I get one of the members to move the last minutes of the last meeting and to approve them as a correct record?
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thatchell. Anybody second those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Graham. Shall we just take aye, just to say we all approve it?
Aye.
If there's no dissent, I assume it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any additional items of business?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Any declaration of interest?
I have not received any declarations, Chair.
Thank you. And item 5 is to determine exclusion of public, to determine during which items, if any, the public are excluded from the meeting.
As per agenda, Chair.
Okay. As per agenda, yes. Item 6, do we have any public question?
No, Chair, none have been received.
Okay, thank you. If we can move on to item 8 instead of 7. 7 is duplicated, it will come into item 9. So item 8, can we approve the annual governance statement for 2019 and 20, please?
Nobody talking.
Is anybody going to be moving that report?
Is anybody introducing the item, Chair?
I'm asking that, Councillor Lishman. Is any officers?
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you, Chair. The annual governance statement is published alongside the statement of accounts. The production of an annual governance statement is a statutory requirement of the Council. For the 2019-20 annual governance statement, various documents and publications were used for evidence gathering for the review. These documents included SITFA's Delivering Good Governance in Local Government framework, the role of Chief Finance Officer, the role of Head of Internal Audit, and so forth. Assurance questionnaires and certificates were received from Heads of Service, Liberata, and Executive members. This AGS was reported to this committee in July 2020 and was approved. These signatures have now been updated again as it's being presented alongside the externally audited statement of account. That is it. Thank you very much, Chair. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Is there any questions from any members? No. Can we approve this report then? So this is annual accounts, sorry, item 8.
Chair, does anybody move approval of the report?
Can we?
Happy to move approval.
Thank you. We
I'll
have a seconder.
second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any dissent or any questions on this? No? Okay, we'll move on. Silence will be, this report has been approved.
Thank you.
Can we move on to item 9, audit findings, report 2019 and statement of accounts. We're here to receive the council's audited statement of accounts for 2019 and 20 and obtain formal approval of the committee to audited accounts and to ask that they be signed off by the chair of the committee, and to approve the letter of representation from the head of finance and property, and to have external auditors sign off by the chair, and to inform the audit findings. Can I ask one of the officers to present this report, please?
Yeah, Chair, I'll present that report. Thank you. Yeah, so as the Chair said, the purpose of the report is to present the Council's audited statements of accounts for 2019-20 for approval by the committee and ask that they are signed by the Chair. I think it's fair to say that this last year has been quite challenging due to various factors, including remote working, staff vacancies, redeployment of staff onto COVID-related work. As a result, the deadlines haven't been met for publication and audit of the accounts. The external audit of the accounts has been concluded by Grant Thornton, and I'm pleased to report that they're satisfied that the accounts present a true and fair view of the Council's financial position. The accounts are included in Appendix 1 for information. As the Council's Chief Finance Officer, I'm required to make representations about a range of issues upon which confidence is placed during the audit, and that's in order to obtain a favourable opinion from our external auditor. A letter of representation from myself to Grant Thornton is attached as Appendix 2, and members of the committee are asked to approve the letter of representation, and that is signed by both myself and the chair of the committee. I'll hand over to Barry Morris from Grant Thornton, who will take you through the audit findings report. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you very much, Howard. Good evening, members. So the audit findings report starts on page 179. What I'd like to do is give a brief introduction, then I'll hand over to my colleague Helen, who will take you through a little bit of the detail at a high level, and then I'll just come back on the final couple of slides. So as Howard has identified, we have now nearly completed our audit, and we do anticipate concluding and providing an audit opinion within the next day or so. There's just a couple of items of information that we're waiting for, but once we've received that, the audit will be complete. The impact of COVID has had a significant impact upon the delivery of the audit, and as Howard has identified, that has meant that the audit deadline of the 30th of November 2020 was not possible to meet. And again, we agreed with officers that we would work towards a target date of today. I think it's fair to say that the pandemic has exposed some significant capacity challenges within the council. And I think from our perspective, the finance team have worked really hard and really diligently to try and make sure that they answer our audit queries as effectively as they can and in a timely manner. But we do also have to recognise that they had many other challenges that they were trying to deal with as well. Now, we consider that actually a 5-month delay beyond the deadline was quite a serious issue, and we did consider whether or not we needed to make an adjustment to our value for money conclusion to reflect the fact that there may be capacity constraints within the finance team. And we did take that to the partner panel within the firm. It was agreed that because the finance team had worked hard and were very proactive in trying to address our issues, and actually the challenges were outside of their control, that would not be appropriate and not a fair reflection on the efforts of the finance team. So I'm merely reporting that here to you now so that you know that it was an area that we actually considered, but we satisfactorily resolved. As Howard has said, the work on the financial statements will lead to an unqualified conclusion, although we did identify a number of amendments to the financial statements, and Helen will take you through that detail as well. And similarly, we've made some commentary in our value for money conclusion, but again, that will be unqualified. We've not needed to exercise any of our statutory duties on the financial statements. I would also emphasise, as you look at this report and some of the issues that we've identified, reflects the increased challenge that we've undertaken this year. That's twofold. Firstly, as a result of the increased expectations on us by the regulators, which expects us to do significantly more work around the areas of the valuation of property, plant and equipment and around pensions valuations. That work will continue over the coming year as we do even more work around management overrider controls, such as journals and management estimates. I'd now like to hand over to Helen to take you through some of the detail of the report.
Yes, thanks very much, Barry. Yes, I won't go through every single page. I'll just pick out some of the key highlights from the report and from the audit work that we covered. So moving on to about page 183, I think it is, sets out our audit approach, and we explain this in our audit plan brought to you earlier on, well, during the end of last year. Materiality, set that just over £1 million. In terms of performance materiality, that's the level at which we sort of, things are important, if you like, within the accounts and helps us focus our work in the appropriate areas. So in our audit plan, we set out some areas of significant audit risk. These tend to be either risks around fraud, or they also include those where there's more estimation in the accounts. So in terms of the fraud risks, we have a revenue risk, and there's also management overriding controls. We're pleased to hear that revenue recognition was absolutely fine. We didn't identify any issues there. And in terms of management override, we have a good look at the journals, and they were absolutely correct as well. So we haven't identified any issues from our testing there. The other two areas therefore are land and buildings valuations and pension funds. Now you will see the results from that work has identified that the valuer, when carrying out valuations, it's purely to do with COVID. They've included sort of a material valuation uncertainty, because it was a lot more difficult to gain certainty over that, given limited access physically, and also in terms of the economic environment in which their work was being undertaken and the estimates going in. So in the audit report, we have included an emphasis of matter to reflect the fact that there is some uncertainty for those valuations, and that's quite a common issue this year. You'll find that's in most audit reports, emphasising that. It's not a qualification, as Barry has said before, it's just bringing readers' attention to that fact. So therefore, the council now in the revised accounts has included those within the notes for not only their own land valuations, but also those within the pension fund. So really, they're the key risk areas that we've focused on. In terms of other issues, I'll just point out a couple of recommendations we've made in terms of the land and buildings useful lives. We've made some recommendations in Appendix A. So if I take you on to Appendix A, that sets out just some of the issues that we've covered as part of that. So we've suggested that as part of the revaluation process, the action plan is actually on page 203, if you wanted to have a look at that. In terms of the asset useful economic lives, then we've just suggested that they revisit those as part of the revaluation process to make sure that the depreciation charges are therefore accurately calculated. And also in terms of recommendation number 1 around assets, the rolling asset valuations means that assets are only really revalued on a rolling programme, and therefore there's a proportion of those that aren't actually valued. So therefore it's incumbent on management incumbent on management, therefore, to sort of consider if those other assets have changed in value and we just suggest that they include a little bit more detail in the considerations going forward in terms of that. That's all I really wanted to say in terms of recommendations on the actual accounts. In terms of value for money, there's a lot of detail within that. And again, we've included some recommendations within the action plan, really just around looking forward in terms of deliverability of savings and also medium-term financial planning arrangements. And there's also capital schemes which we revisited as well as part of the risk assessment. And we just think you should continue to actively manage and report progress on the Pioneer Place capital scheme. That's all really I wanted to go into detail. And the audit adjustments are really just misclassifications and disclosure changes, and they're set out on page 206. So thanks. I'll hand back to Barry.
Thank you, Helen. So members, I would just like to conclude our introduction to the report by referring members to page 209. That just sets out the fees for the audit that we are proposing for the year. And you'll see that there is an increase on the fee that we proposed back in on the 24th of April 2020. And our final proposed fee is £62,720. That reflects the additional costs that have been incurred as a result of COVID-19 and remote working, and the additional costs incurred as a result of the delays in the accounts preparation and the further work that's been required around that. Now, those fees are, of course, subject to approval by yourselves as those charged with governance, and then they go off to Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited, who review all fee variations to make sure that they are appropriate and consistent with their expectations and can be appropriately supported. Members, hopefully this has been a helpful presentation, and Helen and I are now happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Barry.
Through you, Chair, Louise Gaskell's requested to speak as a question, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I've got 3 questions or points to make. One is on page, on the significant findings. Sorry, I was looking in the agenda item 7, which I know we've attached to 9. When it talks about the provisions for non-domestic rate appeals, it says the provisions increased slightly by £6,436,000. Is that correct? I just wanted to know whether that comma should be a comma or a point, because 6,000 doesn't sound like a slight amount of increase.
Question?
Sorry, that was my first question. The question was, yeah, what actually is the fees that are typo?
Sorry, Chair, just having a look through for it. Yeah, found it. Yeah, so that so you increased by 6.4 million in 1819.
So the provisions increased by 6.4 million, which is a slight increase.
That's what it says in there. Yeah, I think that does seem quite high.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that and confirm that one.
Thank you. My second question was, I know there was a significant delay in getting the accounts to the auditors, and I appreciate the reasons for that. I just wondered if that's been seen in any other local authorities or if it's something specific to Burnley Council.
So thank you, Councillor. That's an excellent question. So in terms of the delays in getting the accounts to us as auditors, that was seen in a relatively high number of councils, and Burnley is by far not the worst, but again it did miss the deadline of giving us the accounts by the end of August, and as we've identified, we got them in October. In terms of the audited accounts, there have been significant issues in relation to that, so obviously we're signing them off hopefully in the next couple of days, but just to put that into context, we did refer to the end of November as the deadline that they should have been signed. Nationally, across all local authorities and all audit firms, just under 48% were signed, so less than half were signed by the end of November. That improved by the end of December. But again, there remain a number that have yet to be signed off. So this has been an exceptional year. It is also fair to say, therefore, councillors, and probably won't come as a surprise, that that's had a significant impact on us starting the work for 2021. So it's unlikely that we'll be able to recover fully in the current year.
Okay, thank you. My final question, Chair, is of the recommendations that have been put forward to the council, have they all been accepted or not?
That's what we're discussing today, I'm assuming. And
Yeah,
in
take
terms
that.
of recommendation, that's what it says on the report for us to recommend and approve. So is it,
Sorry,
how would
Chair,
you want to put anything in?
sorry, just a point of clarification. The recommendations within the report that the auditors have put forward, have they been accepted by the council as?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you, I think we've put management comments against each of those recommendations, and we've accepted the majority of them, and they will be they've either been amended in the 2019-20 accounts already, or they will be incorporated into the 2021 accounts. They will start in preparation of at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Lister.
Thank you, thank you, Shah. It's following on really from Louise's question. I noticed what Barry was saying in the presentation about potentially capacity gaps in the finance team. I'm also acutely conscious of the work that was additional to the finance team in meeting the government's request to provide grants to various local businesses and self-employed people, etc. So I'm intrigued on two counts. One, that did it go in every other council's case? Did you go to your Grant Thornton panel and discuss those issues with them? Or was Burnley an exception in that? And I note your comment about the knock-on effect because the work on this year's accounts has been delayed. And when will you be presenting a timetable, presumably in conjunction with our finance team, about how that timetable will be met and those accounts will be done for the forthcoming year, and what impact that will have on us as a council if there is a delay?
Okay, thank you very much through the chair, if I may. So, no, we didn't go to the panel, the partner panel, for all councils. So again, it's only those where we've experienced significant delays in terms of the production of the accounts. So again, a number of authorities did produce accounts by the deadline, the deadline to submit to auditors. And again, it was a unique circumstance, well, not unique, but a fairly a small number of councils where we have taken the view that we needed to go to panel. As I've said, we fully accept your observations, really, which was that the finance team were dealing with lots of other initiatives. And I probably can't believe in order to say this, but we recognise that perhaps external audit wasn't the most important thing to do. And
not
therefore,
to the businesses in Burnley, no.
so therefore it's much more important that they focused on those areas. So we've accepted that. But again, statutory reporting is an important function, and therefore that's why we're really highlighting that actually if the capacity is too constrained, then that can have potential significant ramifications. So that's the issue in relation to the 2019-20 accounts. In terms of the 2020 and 21 accounts, as I've said, there will be a delay in commencing that work. Planning work should have already been well underway, and interim work would have been well underway by now. I don't have the timeline as to when that will be. I suspect that Amy and Howard would like a break from us as external auditors for a week at least, before we come in and start next year's audit. So we will be agreeing a timescale with you the audit and accounts regs have pushed, well, they've put, the deadline was the 30th of November last year. The accounts and regulations have moved the deadline from that date to the end of September, which is an improvement from the previous ones, which were the end of July. But it is unlikely, to be honest with you, that we will achieve the end of September because of the position of where we're starting. So I think getting back to the right place will be a couple of years.
I think in response to that, if I may, Chair, I'm sure that Councillor Graham will agree with me that the sooner we can see a timeline. I take your note about everybody needing a rest, but unfortunately, as I'm sure Howard's well aware, in terms of the workload, it doesn't stop. We do have to carry on. I think it's important for the Audit and Standards Committee to be absolutely clear on what the timeline is as soon as possible, so that we can start to monitor that, because it's important, as you say, statutory reporting is extremely important. And in some ways, I'm slightly concerned that we haven't really had an emphasis in previous meetings of audit and standards, that we were quite so far behind that you had to take it to the panel. And whether that's our fault for not asking the questions or your fault for not reporting, I don't care to dwell on. I just want to make clear that as a member of this committee, I would like to see a timeline and therefore have something to hold both yourselves and our finance department to account to for the future, for the next set of accounts. And if necessary, that would allow the council to consider whether there is a capacity issue that we need to address more fully in the near future. Thank you.
So through the chair, if I may respond, I'm afraid
Yes.
I don't reflect and share a similar view to the councillor. I think we've been clear at every committee meeting that the accounts are significantly behind the publication deadline, and that's been identified in the progress reports that we've brought to the council. We will, of course, bring a timeline as part of our audit plan for the 2020-21 audit, but I'm sure you will recognise we can't do that until we've concluded the 2019-20 audit. So at the next committee, there will be a timeline where we will set out and agree with officers what the delivery of the 2021 audit. What I'm trying to do is be upfront and transparent that, in my view, we will not be able to meet the 30th of September revised deadline by the accounts and audit regulations. Should the council commit that they're able to have sufficient capacity to be able to do that, and we can match that capacity, then we will review that and see if we can get back on track.
Chair,
Thank you, Barry. Is there any other questions regarding this?
No
Chair,
request. Chair,
sorry,
no.
Chair, if I could just respond to that last one, that the item 12 covers the annual account arrangements for 2021. So as officers, we're reporting through the amended deadlines again for the next 2 financial years. And it is officers' intentions to meet the deadlines for at least our side of that, and to work with the external auditors in achieving their deadline. And that's our intention, and it always has been. So we'll make sure that we provide enough resource for that to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions on this?
No request, Chair, and I don't see any members signalling to speak.
If we can then move on to item 11, is it? Sorry,
Through you, Chair.
10. Item 10.
Thank you, Chair. This is the quarterly report for the period of October to December 2020. 3 reports have been issued in this period, of which one of this report is a Burnley Leisure.
Excuse me, Chair. Sorry to interrupt. I did try to speak, but I seem to be muted. We haven't agreed the recommendations for item 9. We need a mover and a seconder.
Yes, Christine, I apologise. We didn't do that.
Right. Okay.
If we could just
so can I have somebody to move approval for item 9, please?
Move approval.
I'll
Thank you.
second that, Chair.
Thank you.
If there
And
isn't-
also, can I just ask on page 178, it's saying where the chair will sign, and I think Howard will sign, but obviously because this is a remote meeting, are you going to sign those forms and scan them in or post them in or to
Yeah,
the town hall?
We've made arrangements with the chair.
Right, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you.
Lucy. No,
Thank
you're right to do so. We just
Thank you.
missed the point. Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
item 10, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. So this quarterly report is for the period of October to December 2020. Appendix 1 details the audits completed in that quarter. Recommendations are scored as high, medium, and low. And as it can be seen, we have managed to complete some of the audit plan in quarter 3, and we have been supporting the council's COVID response in several areas. We carried out some follow-ups in this period. We do have a vacant auditor's position, and the recruitment process is ongoing. And that is it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Is there any questions on this from anyone?
Request to speak from Louise Gaskell, Chair.
Louise,
Thank you. Just a quick one. Note 12 says the vacant auditor's position is still being recruited to. I just wondered if there was any update and any information on how close you were to recruitment, because I know understaffing has a significant impact on the audit department, internal audit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The interviews have just recently taken place, just yesterday, but obviously the decision is still ongoing. So hopefully it should, by the time the recruitment does, the person is offered the post, and then it'll still take a short period of time after references and things like that.
Thank you.
is there any other questions on this report?
None received, Chair, and no visual indications to speak.
Rightio. Can I get somebody to move it?
Can I move the report?
Thank you, yes.
Second, Chair.
Right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Councillor Fishman. So moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Lishman.
There's
If
no
we progress on
dissent.
to- Sorry?
No
Is there any
dissent.
dissent? No dissent. Thank you.
Thank you.
We could move on to item
11.
11. To review and update strategic risk register 2021.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. This
Thank
is
you.
the strategic risk register, and we do look at this frequently, and rightly we should. This has had some substantial changes in it, because we've updated the strategic objectives of the council. So all those have been updated within the strategic risk register. In addition, we have increased the risk score in terms of the failure to response to widespread illness because of the nature of the pandemic. Obviously, as the roadmap progresses, the council's role in this process has increased along several fronts: testing, tracing, vaccination, returning services to normal, as well as trying to ensure that we deliver all these services that we are additional elements that sort of come through. So we're working on the economic impact in both the council and in the borough's community. And one of the major events obviously coming up is the elections in May. So that's why we've increased that one. In addition, just as a partial information, the low risk that we have in association with malicious attack. The national terrorist threat recently did decrease from severe to substantial in February. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Anybody has any questions?
None currently, Chair.
Okay, just a quick note. I think there's been significant high risk on various areas. I think that's because of COVID. So just to note that. If there isn't any questions, can I ask somebody to move and second it, please?
Chair.
Anybody?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of the issues are related to COVID. I'd be happy to move the report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will be happy to second it, as I am, when it was my role, partly responsible for some of the red areas. I'm not going to argue.
Thank you, Councillor Richmond. Is there any? No, we'll move. That's been approved.
Thank you.
Can we move on to item agenda 12? And that is to update Audit and Standards Committee on arrangements being made and implications of changes required for the Council ahead of closure of 2020 and 2021 accounts. Is it Amy Johnston?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, the purpose of this report is to inform members of the close down arrangements for the 2021 Statement of Accounts, including the accounting policies which are included in Appendix 1 of the report. Also to inform members of the change to the close down dates for the 2021 and the 21-22 Statement of Accounts, and that a date will be confirmed later for the member training session for the 2021 accounts. As Howard mentioned earlier in the meeting, a key area to highlight is the movement of the close down dates. This is following the Redmond review. So the closure date for the draft statement of accounts has been moved from the 31st of May to the 31st of July, and the audited statement of accounts from the 31st of July to the 30th of September. This is following a consultation exercise carried out by MHCLG and is for a 2-year period initially, after which it will then be reviewed. Also to inform members that the implementation of IAS 16, which is around leases, this has been delayed from the 1st of April 2020 to the 1st of April 2022. Just to note, there's been no significant changes to our accounting policies, which are included in Appendix 1 of the report, and neither have there been any significant changes to the requirements of the AGS for the 2021 Statement of Accounts. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Is there any questions?
No, Chair, none received.
Chair, I haven't had time to type RTS, so I'll be naughty and talk. I just wanted to say thank you for this. It does allay some of my concerns in that it shows a clear commitment by our council and our finance department to meet that deadline, and I know we'll be kept up to date, and I do hope that we'll see similar deadlines met by Grant Thornton as our external auditors, and also enter into a constructive discussion if there are problems on their side earlier on in the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. Is any other comments or questions on this? Yes,
No.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, I'm like Councillor Ishman. It takes too long to put the RTS up. It's better just to speak up or wave your hand about, I think. I agree with what Councillor Ishman said. I've certainly had some issues with what Grant Thornton was saying earlier, and Maggie more or less expressed my concerns earlier. I think thank you very much, Amy, for this report and for explaining it. I think I'd like to move the report.
Is there anyone who'd second this report?
I'll second, Chair, and echo Sue's comments. I think the finance department have worked very hard on a number of fronts, and to be setting the challenge for next year as well is great to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. Anyone wants to comment, or shall we move to, or if there's no dissent, I'll move this item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 13, to consider the revised corporate policy for covert surveillance and covert human intelligence sources under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. Catherine, is Catherine here? She wants
Yes, I am.
Yes. Move the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report attaches the updated corporate policy for covert surveillance and covert human intelligence sources made under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, or RIPA as it's more commonly known. In a nutshell, the changes to the policy are a general update to reflect changes in personnel and organisational issues, and implementing the recommendations of the IPCO, which were to include examples of scenarios in the policy and to extend the section on the use of the internet and social media sites. In addition, the policy now introduces a non-RIPA authorisation, which is to be used where RIPA is not engaged, because either the surveillance is not covert or it is covert, but it's not for the purposes of an investigation of a crime. The use of a non-RIPA authorisation will help ensure that the Council does not breach Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, which is the right to respect for one's private and family life. And once the policy is in place, we propose to implement a training programme for staff on the new measures within the policy. This updated policy will need to go to the Executive for approval, so the recommendation in this report is that the committee recommend to the Executive that it approves the policy. I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Catherine, I've got Councillor Graham, who's indicated to speak.
Okay.
Sorry, you actually dropped out. I'm having some connection difficulties this evening. I didn't catch everything that you did say, but I have read the report. And I'm very familiar with RIPA because having been an officer and used to dealing with it in its earlier things. So yeah, I mean, obviously it needs updating from time to time. This is appropriate, and I'm happy that we moved the report. I'm a big fan of Line of Duty, and all the talk this week has been about chises. And I'm now very familiar with what a covert, what human intelligence source is. So thank you for enlightening us on that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so it is quite timely given the new Line of Duty series that started, which was all about chises, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Don't spoil it for me, I'm stacking them up.
I'll second the report, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any dissent? Otherwise, we'll move. So, move on to item 14. To consider the work programme for the current year 2020 and 2021. Can we get somebody to move the report, please?
Chair, through you, Chair, it's Chris Gay. The work programme, obviously, this is the last meeting of this municipal year, so the work programme for this year for the audit, the audit has been completed, and there will be a new work plan, notwithstanding a number of the items discussed this evening that will come onto the work plan for the new municipal year and the first meeting of that year.
Thank you, Chris. Any comments on this? No,
None
so
received, Chair.
Okay, so we'll just note that work programme.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to remind people that it's Louise Gaskell's last meeting, and on behalf of the audit committee, and I would like to thank her for the services that she's given for us in the past, and I'm sure all members would agree with me.
Absolutely, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. That's the end of the meeting, unless there is any other business. I've got nothing on my agenda. No. Okay, thank you for attending. Have a nice
Safe
evening.
journey to the kitchen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you.